Hello, everyone. This is Mary Gregory with MAS Coding Solutions, your coding guru. I don't know what made me say that today, but I just think life should be fun and we should enjoy life. Want to talk to you about our new platform that's coming this summer. It's the HIM Coding Network platform. It's going to be a private a space for us coders to meet together. And I would love for you to come and join us in this space. We're going to be able to chat. I'm going to have classes at Mass there. We're going to be doing uh, monthly videos. We're going to be doing live education. We're going to be doing live meetings. And more than that, guess what? You have access to me. I'll be able to be out there in that room chatting with you, helping you to grow, helping you to have the confidence that you need to have as a professional coder. So when we send out that email to you to join our wait list, I can't wait for you to join our wait list and become a member of our new platform, HIM Coding Network. I look forward to it. Okay, we're going to provide some free CEUs, low cost CEUs. We still going to have classes that you can take. Medical Coding 101 is going to be housed there. Our CCS prep is going to be housed there as well. In additional, I will hopefully be able to finally get my inpatient coding classes up there as well. But it's going to be a place where you can come and meet and talk with other coders. There's going to be a place where you can ask a coding question and you're not going to be judged whether it's a good question or a bad question. We are all learning. We all don't know everything. Let's all reserve the right to be wrong so we can learn what we don't know, okay? So look forward to having you as members of this private network. Not, you can join, but it's going to be private. It's not going to be open to the public, only to the people that join the network. We're going to, like I said, we're going to have audios monthly. We're going to have chats, at least bi-weekly chats where we're going to have like an FAQ or just chit chat. We're going to have a guest coming in. So I just cut myself off. Oh boy, I think I'm just kind of messing up here. All righty, I'm sorry about that, people, okay? Sorry about that. This thing from Zoom keep popping up. No, I don't want to review a recording, so finally figured out how to click that up, click that off. So I don't know, Danny may be able to clean up that part. So but I think I told in the first video, this is actually part 2 of the CCS, preparing for the CCS. And then part 1, I let everyone know I'm doing this. Danny, my videographer, is not here today doing this. I'm doing it. So it's not going to be as beautiful as Danny does it, but hopefully you'll learn from it. So we're going to be talking about part 2 of the CCS. Part 1, we just talked about the diagnosis, your principal, secondary. I didn't go into all the things we could have gone into, like how to code sepsis and localized infection, how to code, make sure you understand the coding of respiratory failure, when it can be principal, when it can be secondary. These are just videos to give you some hints. We have an online CCS class. It's really, really very reasonable. And I provide coaching with those classes. Now, part 2 of preparing for the CCS, we're actually going to be talking about our ICD-10 PCS coding. That's the procedure coding that we use in the facility. Personally, I have a love-hate relationship with PCS. There are days I really like it, and there are days I really, really don't like it. I think it's a very, very busy coding system. I think it can be convoluted. So when testing for the CCS, this is what some of the things you need to know. First of all, I want you to understand how to how to select your principal procedure. They really, really big on that. And if you're coding out there in the real world, we know that MSDRGs are driven by certain things. And one of the things it's driven by is what we consider to be procedures that affect the MSDRG. Every procedure that is performed does not necessarily affect the MSDRG, even though it could be your principal procedure. Now, because CMS have put these procedures into hierarchies, and whether I like it or not, there's some procedure that's going to affect the MSDRG, and there's some that's not. I may have a patient that have a quote debridement done, excisional debridement, okay? And sometimes that excisional debris, most times, if it's excisional, open, then it's going to affect my MSDRG. If it's non-excisional, and they can do a non-excisional in the OR, they can do an excisional at the bedside. Even if that excisional debridement is done at the bedside, it could be the driver of your MSDRG. That's just the way it is. I may not like it, but that's how that works. Now, depending on what PCS book you bought, you can buy one from the APC, you can buy it from AHEMA, you can buy it from Optum. I kind of have used all three. I really don't have a favorite. I used to have a favorite PCS book, but I don't now. So, but they have in your book this little section called Selection of the Principal Diagnosis. So study this, because on the test, it will make a difference in your score. See, so they said the first thing is the following instructions should be applied in the selection of principal procedure and clarification on the importance of the relation to the principal diagnosis when more than one procedure is performed. So you as a coder, now, like I said, in the real world, this is a little bit different, but you're taking this test and you want to follow their rules and their guidelines. Not what you do in your facility. I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong or anything like that, but you really want to make sure you follow these guidelines when you're taking the CCS. First of all, you have a procedure. You have to say, was this procedure performed for definitive treatment of both the principal diagnosis or the secondary? So when someone come in and they have a hip fracture and they also have a shoulder fracture, so you got two fractures going on in two different locations, they actually take the hip fracture to the OR and put it, and do a ORIF, or they may do a replacement. Now that's therapeutic. What they do for the shoulder fracture, they say, well, we can just put that in a sling, it'll heal on its own. But guess what? The hip fracture surgery is going to be first. That's important on this test. Now, in this real world of coding, you might actually say, you know what, and you just put a closed reduction or put the sling on, whatever they may do. You may say, well, they did that on 8-9, I'm gonna code it first. They did the hip fracture on 8-12, I'm gonna code it second. Well, we probably really shouldn't do that, but let's just say you forgot and you did that. But guess what? You're still gonna get paid for your hip fracture because it's greater than someone getting a closed fracture, even an ORF on the shoulder. The hip fracture is going to override because it's a much greater procedure. It requires more. It's more intense. See, and so they will. But when you take that test, you better put that hip fracture repair as number one, because it's the one most closely related to the principal diagnosis. Because let's face it, a hip fracture is greater than a shoulder fracture. So the hip fracture is going to be your principal diagnosis. So you want to make sure if they do anything for their hip, it's going to be number one. See, that's how you have to look at it. But let's say, well, Miss Mary, the guy had a hip fracture. He also had a shoulder fracture. That shoulder fracture required an ORIF. They said the hip fracture wasn't that bad. They did just, the patient, keep the patient as non-weight bearing. Guess what? Now your shoulder, because it's an ORIF, is going to be greater than that hip. And that's how you have to think about this. Okay. So we many years ago, I remember this happening to us. It was just an oversight on the code. It wasn't me. It really wasn't, because I'll tell you when I make my mistakes. I made a big one time. So anyway, the patient came in. She had fallen, and you may have heard the story before. She had fallen and had a UTI, but she also had the hip fracture when she fell. So the coded the hip fracture, and for whatever reason, just things could even happen after the bill went out the door. The UTI was put in as the principal, and the hip fracture was put in the secondary. And of course, we got we got a lot more money than we were supposed to get. They came in, they looked at it, and sure enough, the hip fracture should have been the hip fracture diagnosis should have been number one. And of course, the hip fracture repair would have been number one. But there will be times when you may have a therapeutic procedure for the secondary diagnosis, and you had a diagnostic procedure for the principal. When you take this coding test, let's say your patient came in with abdominal pain, once again, using abdominal pain, but they also noticed that the patient had a mass underneath their arm. And so the doctor go in, he does a colonoscopy. That's diagnostic. That's the one that's mostly related to the principal or the diverticulitis. And while the patient there, they notice the patient had some lymph adenopathy under the arm. They go in, they do an excision of that lymph node. Well, guess what? A lymph node is going to drive your reimbursement, because the excision of a lymph node in the inpatient setting is considered to be a procedure that can affect reimbursement. And so in our real world coding, we may put that lymph node first, we may put it second, but guess what? We still gonna get paid for the lymph node removal. Well, when you take this test, you're gonna put the colonoscopy first and the lymph node excision / biopsy second. That's the way this thing works. So make sure you study those. The reasons in looking at these, the selection of the principal diagnosis. When you're doing PCS coding, we have tables. We have tables by body system. And it's like 9 groupings that they have. So you want to look at those 9 groupings because like you have a group that says it takes something out with putting anything in. So you may see excision in that grouping. You may see resection in that grouping. You may see destruction in that grouping. See, they group these operations together. Now, I don't know if they ever ask you a question about what's in what group, but that won't be hard to answer because they're all in your book. These groupings in your book, the definition of your approaches is in the book. In the back of your book, it's the definition of your approaches. It's definitions of devices, body parts, all that. It's in the PCS book. In your PCS book, we have tables by body system. It starts at the top and goes to the bottom. So we got enter. So your first body system is the central nervous system. That having to do with your brains, cranial nerves, that is always there. And always remember with your PCS coding, 0 represent medical surgical. Then when you get to 1, that's OB. Anytime you see a 1 in front of the rest of the numbers, you're dealing with an OB code. Know how to code OBs. Um, in dealing with your OB coding, guess what? If the patient has a procedure that's not on quote what they consider to be the um, pregnant uterus or the fetus, you may have to code that procedure in one of the other body systems. Like for example, if your patient having a episiotomy after they during the delivery of they do them usually during the delivery to assist in helping the baby to be delivered. Well, guess what? When that happens, the episiotomy is actually coded in the muscle table. See? And if it's a 3rd degree where the rectum is involved in that repair, then guess what? You're going to be in the digestive system. So you have to pay attention. The delivery of the baby is going to actually be in the OB section. A D&C, I believe, on a pregnant uterus is in that section. But just a regular D&C on a non-pregnant person is going to be in the female system. And so make sure you understand how to get to the right system. Also, the way they divide the nerves, not the cranial nerve, but the peripheral nerves, your tendons, they divide it into upper and lower. And so they cut it off at your diaphragm there. So anything like if you have a medium nerve, that's going to be in the upper nerves. If you're dealing with the tibial nerves, that's going to be in the lower nerves. So make sure you understand where the cutoff is. And they're going to give you the answers, so don't make it complicated. Just, go to that table and see. Now, the one thing too that's really, really to me is very aggravating about PCS, even in real world, is no description by the codes. You build a table out of, I'm looking here in the gastrointestinal system for drainage. The first one is 0. The second character is always the body system, as long as you're in 0. Now, when you go to 1, when you go to OB, those characters can change to, be appropriate for that section. When you go to administration, the position, the definition of those positions can change, because when you go to administration, you're not dealing with body parts. And so your definition, now I think 3 is administration. Sometimes I hate throwing stuff out because people are so tough. She said 3 was administration, and I went to my book and 3 wasn't administration. It was something else. So yeah, 3 is administration. And so there, when you go to administration and you go to 3, the second character stands for circulatory, and the third character is transfusion. See, whereas as long as you're in that 0 section in medical surgical, 0, your first character is always going to be 0. Your second character is always going to be the body system. And the third character is always going to be the root operation. That's not going to change as long as you're in 0, as long as you're in medical surgical. But see, when you go to administration, you're not really dealing with body parts. So yes, it's going to change. But as long as you're in administration, 3 going to always stand for administration. 0 may not always, and 0 going to always stand for circulatory. But then in administration, C, the second character in administration, is indwelling devices. See, and the root operation for indwelling devices in this particular table is irrigation. You're cleaning that device. See, and some of these we'll never use because a lot of things are charge master driven. So I was using this example in digestive where we got the 0 for medical surgical. You got D for gastrointestinal system. You got 9, that's my root operation for drainage. So long as you in medical surgical, the root anytime you see a 9 in that third character spot, it's drainage all the time, all day long, and twice on Sundays, I like to say. Okay. Then the fourth character in the medical surgical section is always going to represent the body part. What body part you're working on within that system. Then your fifth character is going to be, how did you perform the procedure? Did you do an open procedure? Did you do a laparoscopic procedure? Did you do a needle, percutaneous? And then the sixth character is always going to be some type of device. You may not always have a device. And of course, the 7 characters qualifier. Most of the time you have a lot of ZZ codes because a lot of codes don't have devices. They don't have characters. So I did just want to mention that. Once again, I don't want this to be way too long. I might do another part with PCS. I'll see what some of my reviews are if you want me to go further into PCS for the CCS, but you gotta make sure you understand the definition of the principal procedure, how to apply that to your procedure coding, make sure you know how to lay out your characters. Every procedure has to have 7 characters. Make sure you study, they got some conventions as well as coding guidelines. Make sure you study A11, A is in Apple, 11, that talks about how you as the coder must know how to take the documentation that the physician has and apply to the proper PCS code. Study control of bleeding. People really struggle with that one. So you want to go to the root operation control. And control has to do with bleeding. So you want to study that as well. I'm just kind of hitting the ones that we tend to struggle with. Remember, all laparoscopic procedure, arthroscopic procedure, anytime a scope procedure is done, if it's done therapeutically, it usually referred to as endoscopic percutaneous, but it just means scope. Or if they do nothing therapeutically but look around, that's inspection. So make sure you understand the definition of the root operation as well. Okay, I'm gonna sign off for today. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and even Instagram. Our website is www.mascodingsolutions.com. Be on the lookout for our wait list information coming to you concerning our new website, our new platform that we're gonna have for coders, our private network, HIM coding network that we're gonna have for coders. Don't forget to buy me a cup of coffee. I look forward to talking to you in the future. And just remember, you are a great coder. Sometimes we let other people define who we are. And we all gonna make mistakes, and we all gonna some days miss it in our coding, but that don't mean you're a bad coder. Okay, just want to say that to you. Look forward to talking to you in the future. Bye-bye.